Good afternoon and welcome everyone, to our first day of our Golden Graduates Week and our celebrations. So I'm excited to see so many of our Golden Graduates logged on, and a very special welcome to our classes of 1970 and 1971 who are celebrating their 50th reunions this year. So we have some great programming throughout the week, which I'm excited to have you all join. And with that, let's just get started. I'm going to do some quick Zoom just reminders and housekeeping rules before we begin. So please just make sure that your computer or your phone is muted throughout the presentation, just so we can have a quality experience for all. If you have any questions at all, please utilize the chat box function at the bottom of your screen. I'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation, and we'll be reading out the questions for Dianna to answer. If you would like automated transcription services, you can do so by clicking that live transcript button at the bottom of your toolbar as well. Or if you would not like to see those, you can also hide the closed captionings through that toolbar as well. And then finally, we are recording this session for those that were not able to attend. So please just be aware that by logging in, you are consenting to that recording. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague and fellow alumna, Dianna Bronchuk. Dianna is a program coordinator here in the Office of Alumni Relations, and also earned her Master's of Science in Corporate and Organizational Communication from Northeastern in 2019. In addition to that, she is also a local Boston tour guide with the wonderful organization called Boston by Foot. So she'll be utilizing her expertise today to give us a virtual tour of the Northeastern campus and show all that has changed, which is a lot, spoiler alert, since the 1960s and 70s. So Dianna, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Hello, everyone. My name is Dianna Bronchuk again. I'm so excited and honored to be leading this virtual tour for all of you as part of the Golden Graduate Celebration. And congratulations on this milestone. And while I know that this year's commencement celebration looks different than in years past, I hope this presentation will not only give you a reflection on Northeastern's growth, but also the fun and excitement of commencement this year. And just to reiterate what Ashley said, please feel free to type in your questions as well as your stories in the chat feature. I've done a similar presentation a few times already, but I learned so much by the memories and the fun jokes that you all share. So please type away in the chat. It always gives me another opportunity to learn more. But without further ado, let's dive into our home between the orange and green lines of Huntington Avenue. And of course, we kind of have to start at the very beginning, right? And that, as you probably know, is pretty humble here with Northeastern. And you may have known that Northeastern actually started in the halls of the Young Men's Christians Association of Greater Boston, the first YMCA chapter in North America, established in 1851. The educational director of the Evening Institute was Frank Palmer Spear, who wanted to start a night school in about 1896. The first class was on October 3rd, 1898, and that truly was actually the foundation of our beloved Northeastern University. But did you know it actually didn't start on Huntington Avenue? It didn't. It actually started in the Back Bay neighborhood of Boston, famous for Copley Square, the Trinity Church, and the public library. What you are seeing right now is the third home of the YMCA in Boston, built on the corner of Berkeley and Boylston Streets in 1883. And it's kind of the birthplace of Northeastern. It wasn't until 1910 when a fire burnt down this building where the Y decided to move further south in Boston to start building their current home today on Huntington Avenue, which opened in 1913. And classes were held in the YMCA's Botolph building, built in 1911. And this building became the South Building, and then that was then renamed Cullinane Hall in September of 1985, making it the oldest building on campus. But, excuse me, as you see here, this is the Huntington Avenue building that was opened in 1913. That's still listed as well. And by the time the Evening Institute moved into this new Y building, there was already 5 schools attached to it. The 1903, the first automotive school, 1904, the Evening Law School, Also the Polytech School. In 1907, the School of Commerce and Finance, which ultimately became today's DeMoore McKim School of Business. And in 1909 was the Cooperative Engineering School, where co-op first started in 1909. Now, here's a question for you folks. Was Northeastern the first school to introduce co-op? I'll give you a second to type your answer in the chat. I already see both yes and no's, but actually somebody did put in the right answer. No, Northeastern is not the first school to introduce co-op. It was the University of Cincinnati in 1906, but I think Northeastern does it better. Would you agree? By 1913, Northeastern was still called the Evening Institute for Young Men. But not long after moving into this building, the Evening Institute began to be shaping up to be much greater. And in 1916, the Northeastern College of the Boston YMCA was incorporated by the Department of Education. Frank Palmer Spear was named the first president. In the next year, the first cauldron was published, and in 1919, the first banquet for Northeastern alumni was held. I wonder what our earlier colleagues in the Office of Alumni Relations were like, Ashley. And Northeastern was only going to continue to grow from then on out. In 1922, after the Department of Student Activities opened, Northeastern became a university, but still kept its ties to the YMCA until 1948 when it officially separated. But don't fear, we still have a great relationship with the Y, and in 2011, we helped renovate the gymnasium and class spaces. Excuse me. And Northeastern classes in some dormitories are still held in the YMCA building, but under the name Hastings Hall, and through this door, as you can see at 320. Any questions before we move on to the stop? I see people were very excited that that answer was given. And so there is a question about where the where the WRBB, which actually stands for World Radio Back Bay. The station is still at the Curry Student Center today. And I see that somebody has a map from 1968 that shows plans for redevelopment at the time. Ooh, would love to see that map. That's really cool. Well, you'll definitely see some photos of campus as we go through the presentation. And let's go to the next stop. All right, so a stone's throw away from the YMCA is what I think of as Northeastern's front gate to the city, Krentzman Quad. Named after World War II veteran, entrepreneur, and trustee emeritus, and 1949 alumnus Harvey Krentzman and his wife Farla in 1996. This was called Ryder's Mound when President Ryder was leading campus in the mid-1970s, but has also been a staple of campus life, witnessing student demonstrations and activities. And as you can see, it is hosting this year our 2021 sign, a perfect photo opportunity for graduates today. But it's kind of funny to think that this used to be just a dirt lot. As you can see from this photo from the 1940s, the lot kind of looks a little bit like Northeastern today, but a lot of things are missing and a lot of things are no longer there. In fact, this staple of campus was purchased in 1929 when and it was the university's first land on Huntington Avenue. And you'll notice that building number 2 is the YMCA building today, or Hastings Hall. And building number 3 way over here, that is current day Cullinane Hall. And it's kind of missing some other pretty important buildings, such as Dodge Hall, that was opened in 1953, serving as the library until Snell opened in 1990. Does anybody remember going to Dodge for a late night study session? But as you move across Krentzman Quad, there's another building that's pretty important, and that is Richards Hall. Originally called West Building, Richards was the first building to be constructed by the university in 1938. Notice the building across the street? That's no longer there. That's no longer there today. That is actually the Boston's Boston Opera House. Excuse me. The Boston Opera House. Built in 1909 as a home for the city's lyrical dramas, the Boston City Building Department declared the Opera House unsafe in 1957. The deed went through different hands until being sold to Northeastern's President L later on this year. And in 1960, later on in the year. And in 1964, Spear Hall opened up as a dormitory for women where Female students were admitted to Northeastern state colleges since 1943, and Spear Hall was one of the many residence halls to be built in the 60s. But Northeastern's largest student body were still commuters from local Boston communities and nearby suburbs. And from my dive into the 1971 cauldron, it was in 1968 where female students were allowed to wear slacks in the dormitories. I'm happy to say that there's not so much of a strict dress code for our students today. But anybody here used to be a resident of Spear Hall? And I bet you're also wondering, what is this tent right out front? Well, as part of safety measures for the pandemic, Northeastern's leadership have really thought of different and unique ways to provide safe dining options. So scattered throughout campus are these large heated tents that have now been decorated with props and different prompts and artwork, providing students a nice relaxing space to eat their lunch outside, to eat their meals outside, and also to still connect with friends. Any questions before I move from the city's theater world to the sports world?
I do think we have a couple questions in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if the Mayor of Huntington Avenue competition is still going on?
So I do know that the Mayor of Huntington Avenue competition stopped for a while, but it wasn't until 2019 or 2020 where our student alumni ambassadors, an organization that is through our office, actually revived the competition, and we were able to name a new mayor of Huntington Avenue. I don't know if they were able to keep up with that this year given the pandemic, but it's definitely something that our students are welcome to bring back.
Great. And then Marguerite also reflected that in the 1960s, there were 4 trees on campus, all in what is now Krentzman Quad. So there's definitely a lot more greenery on our campus now. So I think that's it. Dianna, I'll turn it back over to you.
Totally. We'll talk so much more about the greenery on campus as well. And interesting, Marguerite, that you point out about the 4 trees in Krentzman Quad. One of those trees were actually a meeting point for a lot of different student demonstrations and a lot of different student activist groups. Most notably, the Black Student Association met at quote unquote the tree in Krentzman Quad. I couldn't verify or confirm whether or not that it's the same tree today, but it's still in the general area being in Krentzman Quad. So let's move on to the next spot, probably arguably Boston's more well-known area of Huntington Avenue. So in this photo of 1961, this photo is from 1961. Northeastern had purchased over 20 acres of Huntington Avenue property. That was basically an extension of the main campus from the Orange Line and Huntington Avenue and Ruggles Street, as you can see from the lines that I created. So a lot of development going on around the Orange Line. You can probably see some cars here and there from up. I know all the parking lots from around there. The Boston Opera House is gone, so Spear is coming soon. And I think you could probably see some of your favorite buildings from up above here. And it's obvious, and obviously all the parking lots was to support the commuter student body, and as well as all these new buildings. But I really want to talk about how Northeastern moving on to Huntington was pretty symbolic, because the Huntington area was kind of sacred ground for Boston. And what I mean by that is when the YMCA was still in Back Bay, Huntington Avenue was kind of known for one thing, and that was baseball. The Huntington Avenue baseball grounds were built in 1901, taking over the Huntington Carnival lot that was used for circuses. Before the circuses were at the Garden, right before your graduations. But the field's first game was on May 8th that year. Close to 11,500 people could be seated to watch the Boston Americans, the first iteration of today's Boston Red Sox, including their loyal group of fans, the Royal Rooters. It was on these grounds where the first World Series games were held between the Boston Americans and the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Red Sox's first rival. The series were held between October 1st to the 13th in 1903, and 4 out of the 8 games were played here. And this guy was pitching them. Cy Young, arguably the greatest pitcher in baseball history, was on the Boston Americans and took to the mound on the Huntington Avenue baseball grounds during the series and most of his baseball career, including the first perfect game where no player on the losing team makes it to a base in MLB history on May 5th, 1904. Cy Young retired at the age of 45 in 1911, and that seems to be the year where the Boston Red Sox decided to make home elsewhere. The last game played on the Huntington Avenue grounds was on October 7th, 1911, and the grass was ripped from the field to be put in their new stadium at Fenway Park. You see, Northeastern always had a special connection to the Boston Red Sox, even if some of our students are not fans, even though I'm a huge fan. And if you don't know where this is on campus, it's actually right next to the Cabot Physical Education Center, which today, as you can see, is being used for a lot. But the Cabot Physical Education Center was built in 1954, and it was placed largely in the middle of what was the baseball diamond. But the Cy Young statue was erected in 1993 and is placed near the pitcher's mound of where it was. Today, as you can see, the Cabot Physical Education Center is actually being used as our state of the art COVID-19 testing center on campus. And I have to tell you, this has been knocked down to a science. All right, the testing that goes on here, I believe they just recently did their 1 millionth test. It is so quick and easy, and there's talks about vaccine distribution coming back here. So before I move to the next spot, let me see. I see there's a lot going on in the chat here.
Yeah, so it looks like the tree where Black students met was located between Richards and the L buildings on the quad. And then Rich D asked, we had the tradition of rubbing the Husky's nose for good luck prior to an exam. As a result, the nose was also very shiny from frequent rubbing. On a visit to campus many years ago, pre-pandemic, I noticed it was not shiny when touring campus with our daughter. Does this tradition still exist today?
Well, yes, it does.
Yes.
I
rub it every time I'm in Blackman Hall.
I was gonna say I've been rubbing the ears because I am back in graduate school. But yes, yesterday I was staffing an event in Blackman, and I did still see students, even though they are graduating this week, rubbing the nose. So it's still a time-honored tradition. And thank you for talking about the tree. I will definitely bring that back up to the library, to the Snell Library archivist. Um, and somebody's talking about the circus unloading their animals from the train behind Northeastern in 1964 prior to the parade from Copley to the Boston Garden, where we were in the physics lab and we were making telescopes, which were used to watch the animals. Oh, how cute. It's lovely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you everyone for continuing to share. I think I'll move on to our next stop on the tour. Okay, so I bet this photo looks a little bit more familiar, right? So now, remember when I was talking about the Huntington Avenue land purchase being converted into parking lots? Kind of an exaggeration, but where again, commuter students greatly outnumbered residential students, a lot of our current green space on campus was once asphalt lots. Here in this aerial shot of campus in 1963, you can see cars bordering the orange line. Do you notice some of your class buildings, such as L or Hayden, or even the Greenleaf building that housed the ROTC on the left-hand side? This area of the southwest part of campus has dramatically changed in Northeastern's first centennial. And if you see your car from up above, let me know. In this photo, in this aerial shot of campus from 1965, you can see this triangular lot that's soon to be home of the Marino Recreation Center today. I'm also going to put in just some directional points here. Right here is the orange line today. This is Huntington Avenue, and this is Ruggles Street. So you can see main campus is still being formed to what it kind of looks like today, but also here we have the Stetsons, we have Spear. Over here we have some other campus buildings. It's truly coming together, and there's truly a lot more to be built. And in this next aerial shot from 1985, we still see some more buildings popping up here and there. But do you notice all this parking lots over here? Well, there was still parking in this area up until the 90s, in particular the mid 90s, when we started building more dormitory and residence halls. And actually, in the late 1990s, and believe in 1999, that's when we started building West Village, a residential neighborhood for our students, where you'll see we have kind of this lovely little green space area. We have another dining tent today. And as you can see on the left-hand side of this photo, we have some fire pits being put up, again, trying to bring more community aspects during this unprecedented times. And West Village continued to grow into the mid 2000s, but really this whole area has grown to be quite a unique spot on campus as it has become Centennial Common. This green space, excuse me, this green space was part of the Centennial campaign celebrating Northeastern's 100 years that was launched in 1994. Anyone here surprised to see so much greenery? I know we already mentioned the 4 trees, but Northeastern now has over 1,400 individual trees on campus. That's a lot. It's so much that Northeastern became an official arboretum in May of 2019 and has over 140 different tree species. There's also some edible berries on campus, but I'll let you guys go frolicking for those once you're back on campus. And here in the Commons, students can see some of their beloved cultural centers, such as the John D. O'Brien African American Institute that opened in 1968 as one of the 13 demands that Black students had for President Knowles. Nearby is also the Latinx Student Cultural Center, and today the JDOAA Institute and the LCC and many other cultural centers provide an enriching community with mentoring programs, stellar events, and scholarship opportunities for Northeastern students. And some of Boston's most beautiful public murals are also on display at the Centennial Common. You see here, the top left is the Arts at Ciencia, a mural designed and created by artist L. Mack on Mercer Hall. And one of the newer murals, and my personal favorite, as you can see from my Zoom background, 999 Cranes by Sylvia Lopez Chavez, that brings so much color and life to Ruggles stations. Now, as you can imagine, Centennial Common is a place of fun and excitement for students, especially this commencement season, as it is part of the processionals. Now, this week from 3 to 5 p.m., 2021 graduates, class of 2021 graduates, can parade through campus on a dedicated route to reflect on their Northeastern journey. The route starts at West Village with the first tunnel on Centennial Common as they walk through to Matthews Arena. I have to say this was set up yesterday and it looks so much fun. I'm excited to see the photos, and I've already heard students from Monday's processional really enjoy it. So who knows, it might be a tradition for years to come. Before I move on, is there any questions?
I have a couple things from the chat box. And Dianna, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but with the change from commuter to on-campus students, do you have any idea what the percentage is for on-campus versus commuter students today?
I don't. I really don't. That's something that I could totally look into. I also
Oh, go ahead.
I also know that the term commuter is different today, just because students who do live off campus are not considered a commuter, but also are not considered are not considered residential students either. So that's definitely something I can look into. Thank you for asking.
Great. And then Someone was sharing a story of how they launched model rockets from the top of the snow mounds in the parking lots. And then Wendell Bourne is actually one of the student founders of the JDOAAI in 1968. So we have one of the founding students from the African American Institute.
Wow. Welcome. Thank you for joining.
All right, I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the next stop on our tour. And that is actually the Veterans Memorial. Since 1918, Northeastern University has had a partnership with the U.S. Army and formed their ROTC department in 1951, with women allowed to join in 1973. On Veterans Day in 2006, the Northeastern University Veterans Memorial was dedicated to commemorate the more than 400 Northeastern students and alumni who gave their lives in service. On the back of the wall are stainless steel plates with a dedication to represent the tags worn by these service members. While I know that during your time at Northeastern there was tension amongst the student body with the Vietnam War, I wanted to acknowledge this monument in the moment of Northeastern's history. If anybody has anything in the chat, let's see. So we can definitely move forward, but I do recommend when you come back to campus to check out this memorial. It is in a beautiful area, as you can see, lined by the trees and across from the Egan Research Center fountain. Right. So, with Northeastern being right next to two train tracks, Northeastern has also started to grow and expand beyond them, making them having to look at building some bridges. And one of Northeastern's largest space across the Orange Line's tracks is the Interdisciplinary Science and Engineering Complex, the first private research development in Roxbury, the neighborhood of Boston. Opened in 2017 to a grand ceremony, ISIC holds labs dedicated to sending projects to Mars, computer science, and many more that are exposed by this ginormous wall of windows on the left-hand side. When you walk into the atrium, many marvel at the stellar spiral staircase that almost leads visitors to the large skylight opening all of the developments happening in the classroom spaces to everyone. ISIC was awarded the 2018 Harleston Parker Medal and was named the most beautiful building in Boston by Boston Society of Architects. And with such a large, gorgeous space across the tracks, we needed to make sure everyone can easily access it, but also access our neighboring communities as well, making us build this bridge. So, being placed in between two subway lines can cause some restrictions for a growing campus, but we take the challenge and produce some grand results. The pedestrian bridge that opened in spring of 2019, I'll have that start at the beginning again. Spring of 2019 was such an engineering feat that this 30-second video doesn't do the 3-hour job justice. The bridge required one of the largest cranes on the East Coast that took 2 weeks to assemble alone. And within the early morning on Sunday, October 14th, students and faculty took a seat within ISIC to watch the historical scientific pursuit. And being built right next to ISIC is what some students are already calling ISIC 2, but will be named EXP. Now, EXP is part of Northeastern's 2025 plan and is slated to open in 2023. The space will hold research across disciplines in areas such as cybersecurity, robotics, coastal sustainability, community resilience, and therapeutic drug delivery. ISIC and the pedestrian bridge are definitely examples of Northeastern connecting to the local communities. The one fantastic partnership of our Office of City and Community Affairs that opened in 2015 is Northeastern Crossing. Located at International Village, Northeastern Crossing is a community center for the local Roxbury community that holds events and classes such as Afro yoga, English learning courses, and financial literacy. Northeastern Crossing is part of the Northeastern University's 2013 institutional master plan, and it is built to bring new connections with our neighboring communities. Another great example of this is actually right up the street from Northeastern Crossing. So Any questions before I move on?
What year was that bridge placed across the tracks?
2019.
2019. Can you just expand on maybe what the NU 2025 plan is?
Yeah, so the NU 2025 plan is part of it's not necessarily just a building campus plan, but just a whole idea of what Northeastern wants to accomplish by 2025. I believe it was launched in 2015, and and a lot of educational institutions, especially those in the city, are required to post and create institutional plans. And so within this plan is more than just, like I said, the building, but also any additional departments, any additional campuses, any other programs that Northeastern would like to try to accomplish by 2025. So if you've heard about the different campuses that have been all the different regional campuses that have been opening up, such as in Portland, Maine, in London, Seattle, Charlotte, those were all part of the different Northeastern master plans.
Thank you.
So I see that somebody talked about the East Coast blackout of 1965, where where directed cars at Huntington Avenue. That's cool. I'll definitely look that up for future presentations too. A big snowstorm in the winter of 1967. Pretty sure there was a bunch of big snowstorms, but there's definitely some that are much more remembered for infamous things than others. So, well, let me move on to the next stop. I'm going to argue that this is actually my favorite stop because it's right across from our office. And so, while Huntington Avenue is the title street for this virtual tour, Columbus Avenue has also become another prominent street on the main Boston campus. Originally called Lowell Street, then Pyncheon Street after the founder of Roxbury in Springfield, Massachusetts, Columbus Avenue has held many historic moments for community members, many happening on Carter Park. Renamed after Sergeant William E. Carter, an African American veteran of the Spanish American War and World War I, Carter Park is the largest city park in the South End and Roxbury communities, and a platform for recreation as well as social justice. It was here that buses left with volunteers for the March on Washington in 1963. Martin Luther King Jr. also held a freedom rally from here to the Boston Common on April 22, 1965, for Boston's Black community to promote the civil rights movement and bring equality and justice to Boston. As part of the Boston Parks Department, Northeastern started a private public relationship with the city in 2015 to commit $108 million to renovate and maintain this historic land. In September of 2018, Carter Park reopened for fall soccer and football leagues, as well as a tot lot dedicated to Victory McGrath of DMSB 2015. The mayor welcomed this new partnership for the park to be used all year round, with the inflated bubble dome to cover the football field for leagues to continue in the winter. I'm not gonna lie, I think this is super cool. I love this bubble. I cannot begin to tell you how amazing it is to still see young children be able to play their favorite sport throughout the winter. It's also cool to stand inside because you just hear the airflow through there and it's heated. So, gotta love that technology these days. And so, before I talk about some of Northeastern's winter sports, any questions? I see the chat is popping up here. Talking about some different snowstorms, yes. All right. Well, I don't see there's any other questions, so let's move forward. Does anybody remember this place? I bet a lot of you have some great memories here about Matthews Arena, which, even though I am a true baseball and Red Sox fan, I have to admit the history of Matthews Arena is really fascinating. Now, Matthews is the home of our proud Husky hockey and basketball teams. It opened in April 1910, so it was the home to actually a lot of teams. All right. The Boston Arena, as it was originally called, was more of a multi use space housing hockey, boxing matches, political rallies, circuses, and rodeos. While Northeastern's male hockey team first started in 1929, in this arena, the Boston Bruins also were founded here in 1924, as well as the Boston Celtics in 1946. And if you're not a Boston sports team fan, another NHL team actually calls the Boston Arena their home as well, the Carolina Hurricanes. Yep, they were founded in Boston under the different name, the New England Whalers, and actually have a unique history themselves. But how did the Boston Arena become the Matthews we all know and love? Well, Northeastern purchased the arena in 1979 and renamed it in honor of Trustee Emeritus and 1956 alumnus George J. and Hope M. Matthews in 1982. While the historic building still holds its charm, it has gotten some technology upgrades with a brand new video board that really amps up the fans during sports games. Now, I must ask you all a question, true or false? Matthews Arena is the first indoor ice rink in the world. Give you a second to answer in the chat. And while I do, I see some people have talked about Beanpot in here, talked about how BU used to play here. Yes, Matthews Arena, when it was the Boston Arena, was kind of the house for a bunch of different college sports, college ice hockey teams, and basketball teams as well too. All right, so is Matthews Arena the first indoor ice rink in the world? Technically, yes, for it being indoor for ice hockey. And it's also the oldest continuous ice hockey rink in the world too, but there's actually some debate on that. Matthews Arena had to close for a brief period of time in 1918 due to a fire. And so the Calumet Coliseum in Michigan believes that they should hold the title as the oldest continuous ice hockey rink since they opened in 1913 and have stayed open ever since. But, I think Matthews deserves the title for obvious reasons. Now, Matthews has been a place of memories for most Northeastern students, and the class of 2021 are no different. At the end of the processionals this week, graduates get to line up and walk across the stage similar to what they would see at the TD Garden and have their photo taken. And while it doesn't replace the grand ceremony, it is a connection and a proud moment for graduates as they enter the next chapter of their lives. Any questions before I move on to the next and last spot of the tour? I see people are talking about the NU Pep Band. Yes, Stacy's mom, I hear, is the song to play at sports games. BU used to play a game before NU had a game, and band we used to use BU destroy their opponent. So and yes, the NU hockey teams, both the male and female ice hockey teams, have become dominating teams in the league. It's really great to see. In fact, the women's ice hockey team this year made it all the way to the championships, the national championships, and you know what? They'll be back there again next year too. All right. And so I'm going to move on to the last stop on our tour, but I would argue probably our favorite, or definitely my favorite. Now, while Northeastern has launched multiple campuses outside of Boston in Charlotte, Toronto, San Francisco Bay Area, Seattle, Vancouver, London, and most recently Portland, we all have something that brings us together: the resilience, the courage, and the strength of being a part of Northeastern. And Frank Palmer Spear, the first president, had started brainstorming of what could symbolize such drive. And he found it in the new frontier. At the time, of course. Leonard Suppla was one of Alaska's great mushers. He was He was one of many of the dog sled teams that braced the harsh Alaska wilderness to bring the life-saving serum to the remote town of Nome that was battling a diphtheria epidemic. The trip would normally take 25 days, but Supla's team, led by Togo, the Siberian Husky, made the trip in half the time, even in the harsh winter storms. Leonard believed Togo should have gotten the newspaper credit that was given to Balto on a different sled team, but was happy to hear that a new college on the East Coast in the lower 48 wanted to have Togo as their mascot. Now, Leonard didn't want to give his lead dog to President Speer, but he gave him a puppy. And so, as you can see in this photo, on March 4th, 1927, a huge parade down Huntington Avenue welcomed Sapsut, who was given an honorary degree. President Speer presented the pup to the whole campus and renamed the dog to King Husky, the first of many to come. And King proved himself to be a worthy mascot when he attended the first sports event at a track meet where Northeastern set 3 university records. And for a short time, live Huskies lived on campus until that was deemed unsafe. A statue commemorating our beloved symbol was erected in L Hall in front of what was to be named Blackman Auditorium in June of 1962. And to this day, students will still rub the nose, as we discussed earlier, as part of the legend to graduate from Northeastern University. And you can still see King Husky at campus events when the official handler, alumna Margaret Cook, brings him and some puppies along, especially this week for the class of 2021. I love this photo. Now, true or false, is Northeastern the first college to have the Husky as the mascot? I'll give you a second to see. Well, hate to break it to you all, Northeastern is the first college to have the Husky as the mascot. I know people are saying UConn is. UConn is not. UConn got declared the Husky in 1929, I believe. So Northeastern was the first. And truly, come on now, we're the best ones to have him too. And truly, and truly, as Togo showed, the Siberian Husky is a resilient and brave and courageous animal, much like all of Northeastern students too. And if anything, 2021 and 2020 has proved that tenfold. And so I hope this virtual tour has proved that statement as we zoomed through the history and transformation of Northeastern's main Boston campus. I'll gladly take any questions or read any history or fun stories that you have to share. Ooh, I see that there's a lot coming up. One question, when will campus be open for alumni visits? You can certainly walk campus, but the buildings themselves are not necessarily open for people to go in. But there is some discussion of in-person events happening in October, so please stay tuned. Somebody asked, does anyone else remember interfraternity hockey games in the 1960s? In the 1950s, to indicate the lack of ice available, all Boston high school hockey teams played and practiced on Matthews Arena rink. Many students would have to practice at 6 a.m. before going to school. I cannot wake up that early. Somebody went to Alaska right after graduating in 1971. The Husky story about NU is not well known in Alaska, but it should be. I completely agree. Somebody said that in our 1971 graduation ceremony was held at the old Boston Garden. It was wonderful, but the event followed the Barnum and Bailey Circus, which was the week before. There was the usual circus smells in the hallways where we formed up the procession. Fun memories. Yes, Ashley told me about that earlier. I definitely can't imagine the smell during that.
I'm glad there's no more circuses before the graduation ceremonies.
And then somebody said, actually, isn't our mascot a Malamute, not a Husky? He was at one point, blue eyes. So I have seen in the archives that's always been a Husky, but Siberian Huskies are known for having blue eyes. Sometimes on logos, the blue eyes were made black or made red due to printing. But let me go dive in more and talk to the library and talk to the Snell archivist on the Malamute one. So, what happened to the taxi building on campus near Matthews Arena? I have not heard of that. There is a parking garage right across from Matthews Arena, so that may be the old taxi building converted into something new. I could definitely send Ashley the link for the new campus map that's still always being developed as we have new. Oh,
I actually did drop that campus map in the chat box, so you can click it if you'd like.
and thank you. Our first swimming pool was the original saltwater pool, 6 feet deep, that made it difficult to learn to dive a 1 meter board. Ooh, oh my goodness, that does sound difficult. I did not mention the first swimming pool. Underneath the Cabot Physical Education Center is the is the Northeastern pool. The real name starts with an N, and I cannot pronounce that at all. But there is a pool still on campus that is being used for recreational activity. And the natatorium. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's not that difficult once you read it out, but yes, the Husky statue is still inside L Hall, right in front of Blackman Auditorium. So, and the School of Education, I believe, has been.
It's now housed under the College of Professional Studies.
Thank you, Ashley. So, yeah. Well, thank you all. I'm happy that you enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you, Diana, so much for this wonderful tour. Yeah, it's great to see how much campus has changed, and it was wonderful to have a very interactive presentation. So I know everyone very much appreciates it, and I'm looking forward to all of the upcoming Golden Graduate Week events. So I hope to see you all there. And if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop them in, but otherwise we will say thank you and see you all hopefully tomorrow.